I believe in progress, not perfection. I think we shouldn't devalue progress by making people think that if you ever make a mistake, that you are not worthy of ever rejoining society.
Hello, and thank you for joining us for this edition of the One Young World Together Apart series. My name is Devika Malik, and I'm proud One Young World ambassador. I'm a disability inclusion activist and the founder of Wheeling Happiness Foundation. Today, we have joining us none other than an actress, writer, host, advocate, Jameela Jamil. You will recognize her from your TV screens, and today we are here to focus on her advocacy and her platform, I Weigh. Through original content, podcasts, and editorials, the platform focuses on social issues of mental health, climate change, representation of marginalized communities, and much more. Jamila, I am so fortunate and thankful to have you here with us, and I cannot express how excited I am to be having this conversation.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
So we'll get right into the questions, and keeping with the times, the lockdown has disconnected us physically. Being a digital platform, how did Ivy adapt to these challenges to help young people feel more connected and seen during these times?
I think young people have spent such a majority of their time on the internet anyway in the last couple of years because the apps are so addictive. And I also think that we have a large community of people who don't feel as though they are in the in crowd. You know, there are a lot of people who feel like outsiders, and those are people with disabilities or people who are larger than what is averagely accepted as it's a socially acceptable sizing, people who are trans. And so I think we've kind of just maintained everything we were doing all along of just making sure that people feel seen. They don't feel ashamed of whatever they're feeling. We look out for the people that are preying on them the most. For example, diet companies have just been rampant throughout lockdown, and we try to provide as many resources as possible. This has been a year where everyone's realized that we just don't have enough information about other groups. And rather than shaming people about that, we've taken this as an opportunity to lean in on allyship, growth, and progress. And so we are somewhere where wherever you're at in your knowledge, you can start with us and we can take you to a place of more understanding.
Thank you so much for that. Your I Weigh campaign has shown the power of the collective and the potential to use technology for good. Can you explain what it means to be radically inclusive?
I mean, radically inclusive is what should just be the norm, but because we live in a world that is so excluding of everyone who isn't basically light-skinned, able-bodied, or non-disabled, I think is the better way to say that, and you know, thin and cis and straight. And so because those people are so centered, it feels like including anyone outside of that is radical, and we lean into that and we practice that, and we're going to keep doing it until radical becomes normal. But we just want to make sure that everyone feels seen. We want our pages to reflect what we walk outside amongst the world within. You know, there are people, all of the beauty of humanity comes from variety and different experiences and empathy and being able to walk in someone else's shoes. And so I think that it's such a vital part of human growth to encourage people to understand one another. All of our fear and discrimination comes from just not understanding each other. We fear what we do not understand or know.
Absolutely, absolutely. And just keeping with the theme of the power of the collective and inclusion, how do we make sure that young people understand this power of the collective, and what can young people do to keep on this movement of body neutrality? And I hope you can tell us that it's not too late.
It's never too late. You know, I learned body neutrality later in my life. And so I think the things that young people can do is, number one, understand that you are never too small to have influence. It doesn't matter if you have 11 followers or 11 million followers, you can impact anyone around you. And if you just change one person's mind or one person's life, then you have created significant influence. And if we all thought like that and we all just tried to take care of our own inner circles, the world would shift overnight. climate change, sexism, rape culture, disability, all these different things, we would be able to solve our bias if we were to just act and understand that we each have so much power and we should just participate in group, brick by brick activism. When it comes to body neutrality, I think it is just very important as a young person to know that it is not your responsibility to follow supermodels and to follow actresses and influencers who make you feel bad about the way that you look, who make you feel bad about the way that you dress or your lifestyle or your love or lack thereof. We don't. There's enough hardship in this world without us deliberately subjecting ourselves to people who make us feel inferior. It is okay to just block, mute, delete, and repeat. I have blocked everyone who makes me feel bad about myself, and I don't consider that a weakness. I consider that self-defense of my mind. You know, there's enough stress, real stress happening politically in the world. We don't need to also, you know, we're under attack from society. We don't need to also contribute to attacking ourselves. So be very careful about what you're looking at online.
I think you did leave us very hopeful with that. And what makes me really hopeful as well these days, looking at my own generation, I do feel that people are willing to educate themselves, they are willing to understand more. So I want to ask you, what makes you hopeful in this moment?
Several things make me hopeful. Number one, I think the next generation are the most informed, intelligent, passionate, and mobilizing generation we've ever seen. They're so much more evolved than any generations before them, and I believe in their power of honesty and knowledge and holding powerful people to account. The other thing that gives me hope is seeing the own improvement in myself. You know, I was such a mentally ill, just detached, miserable, unkind, and ineffective human being just as little as like 8 or 10 years ago. And to see my own development to go from being someone who was a misogynist, someone who didn't help other people, someone who was vacuous, someone who was coming at everything from a place of blame and shame and anger because I wasn't dealing with my own mental health. Seeing how I've been able to shift to a happier, better, and more useful person to other people, where I've dedicated my life now to improving the lives of others, if I can see that growth in myself and I'm not a remarkable person, then I truly believe in the growth of everyone and anyone. And I'm not someone who believes in if someone makes a mistake that they can repair, that we should just throw them away forever. I believe in progress, not perfection. I think we shouldn't devalue progress by making people think that if you ever make a mistake, that you are not worthy of ever rejoining society.
I think what you brought out with that is so much of self awareness. And like you just said, progress, not perfection. You call yourself a feminist in progress. Why is it so important to be open to being corrected?
It's important to be open to be corrected because that's where all of our learning happens. Everything I know, I learned from my mistakes. I didn't learn from what I was already naturally good at. And so we have to look at it as something that enriches us. Gloria Steinem is a wonderful feminist who's 80 something years old, maybe almost 90 years old, and always talks about the fact that she's still learning, even this far into this life of expertise. And she's so like hailed all over the world, and she's so excited about what she still has yet to learn. I think I think this embarrassment we have around failure is so short-sighted because failure is only failure only really exists when you don't try at all. It's very honorable to try when success isn't guaranteed. So I find failure to be very cool because it means that I actually showed up and was willing to take a risk. And so I think accountability is really important. It makes us better people. It also educates those around us. I think perfection culture is really damaging. It's very unhuman. It's very unprogressive and very childish to expect that of other human beings and not know that we are all products of our environment. We all have bias and ignorance, and it doesn't mean it comes from a place of evil. And so I think that Ibram Kendi is a great activist and writer, and he talks about the fact that, you know, for example, with racism, he looks at racism as a diagnosis rather than an identity. It's like you are diagnosed with racism and now you must go away and cure yourself of racism. It's transient. It's something that can go away. And he, as a black man, used to be anti-black and now has become very pro-black and an activist for black rights. And so he has seen the shift in himself and believes in it in others. He, again, does not believe in cancel culture unless someone has done irrevocable harm.
That's some great insight. And I think in the previous answer, we were again talking about how people are presented in the media. And I work, and I love that you talk so much about hyper exposure in the media as well. So,
Mm.
the question around that about using your voice to rewrite the narrative for women in the media. How can young people add their voices to the narrative to disassemble and transform patriarchal structures and make change?
So we live in a supply and demand system, right? The market of media relies on whatever it is that we are clicking on, whatever we are supporting with our attention, with our engagement, with our algorithms online. So when we support tabloid media is set up by a patriarchal, a white, straight, cis patriarchal system that wants to harm women. And I'm sure in India it is a brown, straight, cis patriarchal system. But the patriarchy runs the media and it always exists to temporarily elevate a woman to a level that she cannot sustain and like turn her into a saint, a superstar, a perfect human being, almost like AI. And then they do that deliberately because then it's a long way down when they kick her off a pedestal that she never asked to be on. So they love the fallen woman. They love to demonize a woman because the patriarchy hates women, it fears women, and it wants to justify that fear and hatred of women by making us fear, distrust, and hate women. So it discredits them and it uses all kinds of terrible tactics to try and push a woman to either kill herself or just disappear from our society. I know that we've seen something like this in India recently. We also saw something like that in the UK at the beginning of this year, where a famous woman was pushed by the media to eventually end her own life. And I think that it's really important that we do not engage, we do not click, we do not follow, we turn off our notifications, we do not retweet, we do not talk about the tabloid media. We can drain all of their money and resources. They also rely on advertising that harms women. They are the ones selling the skin lightening cream, cellulite cream, stretch mark cream, anti-aging cream, weight loss products. They rely on shaming women about the way that they look. So it is a feminist it's an act of feminism to, regardless of what gender you are, to not participate in the bullying culture of patriarchal tabloid media.
I think you spoke very recently on your social media as well about this culture of putting women on a pedestal and then
Yeah.
just bring them down, and that made me reflect as well on whether I have looked at some women in the media in that way, or unknowingly thought of some women in a negative light because of something like that. But also it starts very young as well. I think the internalization of the patriarchy and ableism, a simple example would be like if as a young girl you say I am not like other girls, because somewhere you're being told to internalize that feminism or femininity looks a certain way, and we should subscribe to that or not. So definitely it starts very young, and that's why platforms like yours are so important to make that difference to young impressionable minds. And for our final questions, this is a very personal one for me because, like I was saying earlier, I do have a disability that is almost imperceptible to the untrained eye. So, how can people with invisible disabilities feel seen and accepted in this inclusive movement that you have started?
I think it only comes from us coming together because only we really understand each other at this point, and we're being so gaslit by other people who are ignorant. And so, the very first thing we need to do is build up our own online communities and start to come together and be strong and reaffirm one another. And I think there is such strength in numbers, we can be less harmed in numbers. And after a while, as we saw with the Me Too movement, as we saw with Black Lives Matter, with Trans Lives Matter, when you see enough people come together on a subject, other people start to take it somewhat seriously. We knew rape culture existed forever. We knew misogyny existed, but we didn't take it seriously as an epidemic issue until Me Too and Time's Up. And so that is the power of people coming together and not nitpicking each other, of us supporting each other and building up our voice as one, not trying to be, I think there's such this, like, I fear this obsession with individualism of this generation, especially it exists in the West more so than, Asia or the East. But I, I worry that people think that they have to be front and center and the star. They don't. We are safer being a part of something. I hate being at the front of iWay. I very much so try. I call it iWay community because I want this to be as much of a group activity as possible, where I'm not the star, where we are one giant star together. Does that make sense? And so
Absolutely.
I really think just finding your other allies and other army members in this massive ongoing historical fight, I think is vital.
It's a very open and embracing community. I definitely feel like I'm a part of it. And
Mm.
all the things that you spoke about today, progress over perfection, and continuously building each other up, and more importantly, believing in growth and learning from your failures. Those are all such amazing insights. And I think that is something that we always continually need, uh,
Mhm.
because you never stop learning, like you said. Thank you so much for your time and for all these wonderful insights. Let's all give a big thank you to Jameela for sharing her time. And I request everyone to please engage with us in the comments, like and share this session. Thank you so much once again.
Thank you.